Before I start, this is just a reminder, Shit's Fucked is based on my own experiences with sobriety, mental health, and trauma. Each person's experiences and recovery is different. I hope you enjoy the podcast, but please note that I am not a medical professional. However, I hope to introduce you to resources and people who may be able to help. Welcome to the season 2 of Shit's Fucked, because it is. It's your host Paris here, and I am so thankful that you've joined us today as we will be talking with Tina Meyer, who is the founder of the Blue Butterfly Institute in New South Wales, which is a not-for-profit organisation doing their part in helping survivors of sexual trauma start to heal. So doing some pretty damn cool things. Now, for those who are new here, I've battled with alcohol addiction for 17 years. I struggled with methamphetamine for 10 years, and I also worked in the adult industry to support my habits for 3 years. I've been diagnosed with BPD, so borderline personality disorder, and CPTSD, which is complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and I've come a long way. Now, 1 year sober from meth, and I've completely redefined my relationship with alcohol. Now I'm on a mission to discuss mental health and addiction, raising awareness and providing resources to help others build better lives. Through my own experiences, alongside guests in the industry and stories shared from those with lived experiences, we'll tackle the tough topics to start building a support network for those struggling with their mental health and addiction issues. Now, before we dive into today's episode, I do have another big fat trigger warning. So there is a lot of discussion about sexual abuse and trauma, so please be mindful when you're watching this episode and take time to look after yourself. I hope you enjoy it. So welcome to the show, Tina Meyer. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me, Paris. I'm very, very grateful for this opportunity.
That's okay. So you're over in Queensland, is that right?
No, New South Wales.
New South Wales. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. It's all the same side. And currently in the same time zone.
Yes. And are you, so you mentioned as well before that you're kind of regional at the moment. Are you, how far out of, is it Sydney? Yes, Sydney. I was like trying to get my bearings here. Are you?
About a 75-minute drive southwest.
Okay. Oh, lovely. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Well, what we're going to do today is we're going to just jump straight into it. I like to not fluff around. So can you share with us a bit about your background and your experience as the founder of the Blue Butterfly Institute?
All right, of course I can. My name is Tina, and I was born in 1971, which makes me just 53 now. And I grew up in southwest Sydney at Campbelltown after moving there from the inner west of Sydney at 3 with my parents. And I went to high school in Campbelltown, which was a low socioeconomic area, went to university, studied to become a teacher, and started teaching, and have been teaching for the better part of 30 years now, high school English, but also throughout that time, like I love learning. So I did my Master of Arts in Writing. I'm currently doing a Master of Counselling. And can't remember what course I'm doing because we're towards the end now. It's been 2 years intensive, so I'm very, very, very happy for the end coming next month, or actually in June. So I've even got that wrong. But basically, was a high school English teacher for the better part of 30 years. Left teaching in 2018. Have recently gone back after COVID, but started a natural healing business with counselling in it, and basically. That's my background. I'm now counselling 2 days a week in a women's health centre locally. I run my business, and I'm about to start a block in teaching just to help a friend out.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much for sharing. Would you mind telling me a little bit more on what motivated you to start the Blue Butterfly?
I can. I had lived experience of domestic violence from my parents' marriage, which was very volatile at the best of times. And as a result of that, it allowed perpetrators of sexual violence to come into the home. And so I have lived experience of sexual abuse. And as a teacher, we're mandatory referrers of childhood abuse of any sort. And what I struggled with as a teacher was that we would refer the kids and they'd go through the processes of the system, and then there wasn't any support from them at that moment of disclosure. There was no mandated counselling. Yeah. And it really impacted me. And I started to think, God, I've got to be able to do something with my lived experience, and there's got to be a difference made in the world. And I wasn't sure how that would manifest. But a few years ago, one of my ex-students who'd been pregnant in my year 11 class messaged me and said, my daughter, obviously the baby in the belly, has been sexually abused by her grandfather, and we've reported to the police. They've taken statements. We've been waiting for 3 months for counselling and there's been nothing. Can you recommend something? This is when I had started my business in natural healing. And I thought, oh my God, that's ridiculous. So the research shows that the earlier the intervention for healing and therapy, the less likely the impact of the abuse is going to be as significant it is for people in my generation who never disclosed and who never got any sort of therapy. And we live with that impact. So what the final straw for me became the anger I felt that this little girl was not getting the support that she needed, yet our government always says there's support, we do everything we can, we put a lot of money in, and I wasn't seeing evidence of that. So I thought it's time to do something about this. And so I started the Blue Butterfly Institute and got all of the paperwork done with Department of Fair Trading here in New South Wales, and then put a call out for the board and had some beautiful volunteers come along. And this year we actually have 15 volunteers. None of us are paid for the work that we do here. But that was sort of like the moment of clarity for me.
The tipping point. Oh, thank you so much for sharing. And I think it's just incredible what you're doing, because I share that same anger, because at the moment I'm currently studying a Cert 4 in alcohol and other drugs. And I've just been witness to a lot of situations, particularly with our youth, where they're really being failed by the government. And it's really starting to irk me. Like, I've even been dealing with some DCP, like Department of Child Protection, situations lately. And my goodness, like, they just really, they really don't provide a lot of support. Like, if anything, I haven't witnessed any support so far, particularly for the children. It's been very like, we've got limited resources. There's not much that we can do here. You know, and I've ended up in very heated discussions actually with a few case managers, because it's stressing me out. I'm like, no wonder we have so many troubled youth around. Like, there is not really a lot of support like going around for them. Like, why is this not being talked about more? It's just really, it's really starting to piss me off, eh?
Oh, no. So you're preaching to the choir here, because I'm the same. I'm just getting angrier and angrier, because the government at every level continues to say that we've got this funding there, we've got this funding there, we've got this funding there, we're making changes. But the right organisations aren't getting the funding, and the changes that are being made are minute, because realistically they're not funding it adequately enough, because mostly what's needed, well, for domestic violence is housing, and there is none. And for sexual trauma, you need real, definite, honest, trauma-informed counsellors and therapists with multimodalities that can actually get in there and rewire the brain. And there's no money for that. That's all lip service. It drives me odd. the cases we've had come through the Institute the last couple of
Yeah.
weeks, I'm just getting angrier and angrier. There's
Yeah.
a lack of understanding of the impact of sexual trauma on a victim survivor as well, and
Yeah.
how it's like, oh, yeah, I could go on for hours.
I know, I could absolutely go on a tangent here as well, but I do really appreciate that I'm connecting with someone like yourself, and you're actually a bit of a soldier on the ground, if you will, and you're out there trying to make that change because you've seen the gaps, and that's very much where I'm at as well. So, thank you so much for the work that you're doing. I think it's incredible.
Necessary, unfortunately. Our aim actually is that one day it won't be necessary, but we know that we're just sowing the seeds for change. And so it won't probably happen in this lifetime. But hopefully we can start to see changes. Our ultimate aim is that every survivor's story is heard, and that one day there's absolutely no need for an institute like ours.
Yeah, of course. And so what was the main mission? I mean, we kind of already touched on this a little bit, but the main mission that you're trying to achieve, and who's been involved in bringing this to life?
Yeah. The main mission is that every victim survivor, feels safe enough to share their story and feels validated when they do, so that they're not feeling the shame and stigma that we so often do feel. Because even though there's a lot of awareness after Grace Tame became Australian of the Year of sexual trauma, there's still a lot of people in society who don't want to discuss it, who feel very awkward and uncomfortable if someone mentions it. And we need that to change. We need that culture to really change, because when people hear a victim survivor's story, or they hear that someone's been sexually traumatized, because they don't know what to say, they compound the shame that person is usually already feeling. And what really needs to happen is some empathy. So we need some education for broader society there to be able to support victim survivors more capably and more, I guess, in a friendlier sense, in a kinder way, so they don't feel the shame and stigma. And in the sense of who's brought this, like I said, we've got a team of 15 volunteers, myself included. And what the volunteers are doing, we're structured as a not-for-profit, and we're a charity with ACNC, so we've got a proper board. So we've got a president, vice president, treasurer, secretary, and public officer. But all of us within that have different roles as well. So I look after the therapeutic side of the institutes. We run support groups, and I've got a co-facilitator in that who's training at the moment to become qualified fully to do this. I'm obviously already qualified to do this, otherwise we wouldn't be able to. So we run support groups. We have 3 at the moment. One's online so that we can cater for more than people in our areas. And and the other 3 are in our local area. So they cover the 3 local shire areas. Well, we're about to start our next one in another area in May. So we've got 4 support groups as of the beginning of May. And people can dip in and out of those as they want. There's no mandate that they have to share their story. It's all whatever comes for them. They can share bits as they need to. We work on the impact of the trauma rather than the actual trauma itself, because that's where we feel we can make most difference in helping people live better lives. We also have 3 therapists that work with us, and myself included in that as well, and we see individual clients. We also support families, and we've started to do a little bit of crisis counselling at the moment as well. When people are between sessions with someone and they need to reach out to someone, they'll often reach out to us. And so then we've got a volunteer who runs trauma-informed and for sexual trauma release yoga class, and she runs that every now and again. We've got Sarah Canada in Melbourne, who's donated her Writing to Heal workshops to our victim survivors in the Institute, so they get to attend those for free, which is beautiful of her.
Yeah, it's incredible.
It's absolutely divine. And so we've got like a range of things happening. We want to expand, obviously, our program base, but that requires finances and it requires more people. But we run programs online. We're running Empowered Voices at the moment, where people can put a photo up or an image, something that represents them, and they can talk about themselves, and they're either a victim survivor or they're an ally or something. So we've got hashtags there, and we'll be launching people to write their stories or bits of their stories so that we can post them on the website and in social media as well, just to raise awareness mostly, and so that people feel they've got a forum where they're safe and they can be heard.
That's amazing. Oh,
yeah,
it does. It does in great depth. I love it.
Good, sorry.
No apologies. This is amazing work that you're doing. And I love to hear that there are so many people involved in what you're doing as well. And there's a lot of people really giving to the cause, which is just incredible. Awesome.
Yes. And they're not all victim survivors. Some are actually just people who haven't had any sexual
allies.
Yeah. And I think that gives us good balance on our board and committee.
Yeah, amazing. So I was just looking at our next question. I had to have a little internal giggle to myself. I pretty much wrote, when it comes to healing our communities from sexual trauma, particularly within children, where would you say the gaps are right now in this sector? Is the Australian government supplying the right resources? I mean, we just had a brief touch on that, but let's dive in. Let's really expand that one.
Well, we can, because when we're healing from sexual trauma, the first thing you need is someone that understands what that is and what that means. And so one of the things that we will be advocating for legal change in the future is that at the point of disclosure, children receive mandated counselling from a specialist sexual trauma therapist at the point of disclosure, that there's none of this waiting 3 months or 6 months. There's none of this, there's no one available. There's not giving them the choice, because all research points to the fact that the earlier the intervention, the better the health outcomes are for the long term, which makes sense. Like I was just speaking to a friend of mine this morning that I had an appointment with my own psychologist yesterday, and we were talking about my sleeping. And because of my fear at night when I was a child for so long, my sleep is crappy at the best of times. And it's because I'm hypervigilant. I'm almost always sleeping with one eye open. Yeah. And I was saying to them, had I had that early intervention, I may have been able to rewire my brain earlier. I could probably still rewire it now, but I'm okay. Like not okay. I am okay, but I'm not okay. Like I know sleep is important and vital for overall health, but I function all right. So until I'm in crisis state with death, I'll probably not deal with it, but that's also part of who I am, unfortunately. I'm a bit stubborn. So that's one gap. We need to have mandated specialist counselling for kids at the point of disclosure. The other thing, another gap, is in the training of our police force. And the government must believe that they are all very well informed about how to deal with children and with victim survivors of sexual trauma, but the experience that our clients have says completely otherwise.
Right.
And they're the people that are actually going through the system now, and they're saying that doesn't exist, that there are there's the odd police officer who is really solid and really supportive and doesn't make them feel ashamed, but more often than not, they are made to feel ashamed. So one case in particular, our client was assaulted at the end of 2022, and the police basically re-brutalised her and re-victimised her in their interviewing. And they made her feel like she was the person that had done the wrong thing because she had dared to go to the toilet in a public area. Like,
you're joking.
Toilet. No, I'm not.
That pisses me off so much.
Oh
my God.
And look, because then you read the next thing on the news is, police are trauma informed. No, they're not. No, they're not.
They're definitely not.
They're definitely not trauma informed when we're seeing so many things like this.
Yeah, I've witnessed it. I've witnessed it myself. Like, they are absolutely not all trauma informed. I mean, maybe there is a brief training they go over, but maybe it's not in depth enough. Maybe they're not keeping on top of that. Should they be refreshing their trauma informed training? You know, how do we even change that? What would you think is the best way to go about that?
So my suggestion for fixing it, because I've got lots of suggestions, most of them probably not practical, But my suggestion for that would be having them work with victim survivors who have done a fair measure of their healing work, so who won't be activated by it, who can speak and articulate the experiences and the impact of them, and have honest conversations so that they get that insider perspective. Because
So
it's
it's
not
kind of
hard
like,
to feel compassion and hold space for someone. You've just got to be empathetic.
so could it even be like an advisory point, like someone coming in
Absolutely.
who has that experience and then could guide police officers in how to manage
Yeah.
situations?
And have those, like, have a group of people who are in that position where they can do it, who can also sit with the kids if they can't have a parent with them. So that some kids are still not necessarily being interviewed alone, but not being interviewed in a safe way. Because it is
Yeah.
terrifying going to a police station. And kids
Oh,
honestly
absolutely.
believe they've done the wrong thing. They believe they've done the wrong thing with the abuse anyway, and that somehow they've done something that they shouldn't have done, and that's why it happened. And to make that experience as formal as it is and as horrible as it is does not make sense to me. I had one of our young clients speak to me, and she had just come from the police station and making a statement. And her mum actually messaged me and said, can you have a chat to her? And I said, sure. And she felt like her mum was allowed to stay with her, which was good, but she felt dirty again. And there was no support put in place for her to ground or to debrief or vent before she left the station. So even just adding someone there who can then take a child through what they've just been through and make sure they're okay, make sure they're in their body, make sure they understand what's happened and what the next steps are, and to be feeling safe. How hard, like, it would cost money, but it wouldn't be hard to do it.
No, it would be hard to implement. Like it would be a particular position that you would hire someone to do this.
Yes, and they wouldn't be a police officer, I don't think. They'd be someone that's dressed fairly casually and normally,
Yes.
and a person
Yes.
that gives out the energy of being safe for a child.
Yeah. See, I think that's a great idea. I just
It seems simple, doesn't it? Like, it seems
it
really
does.
simple, but our systems don't allow for it. For some, we talk about advisory points, and I question sometimes who's on the advisory boards of these things. And it's the same in drug and alcohol. It's the same in DV and family violence. The people who are advising are not people who are well positioned to advise, in my opinion. And I don't know who those people are, so it's easy for me to say that when I don't know who they are. But there doesn't seem to be enough understanding at that higher level of system to make the changes that are seemingly quite simple. It's just they would be expensive changes.
Yes. And I think there is that huge lack of understanding and probably lack of lived experience, because that is something I particularly noticed in the AOD sector, right? Is that we're starting to get more encouragement for peer workers to step into a lot of positions in the sector. But a big thing that I've noticed it within DCP as well, is that there's people that just don't have that lived experience, and there is such a lack of compassion and empathy. It's like they're really coming from very biased point of views. They're rolling with the stigma that society has created, those stereotypes and those labels, and it's they're keeping this false narrative, the things that we're trying to change and what we're trying to educate people about. And I just find that so frustrating, like particularly seeing workers in these higher levels who have the ability to really impact someone's life, and they're making it worse because of the lack of understanding and experience and compassion and empathy. That is a really big one at the moment that I'm seeing. I'm just gobsmacked. And particularly it's, I know it's not the training or anything like that, because I know even from doing my studies, I'm really, really being hammered in how important it is to remove those biases, your own personal beliefs, to step back and to really hold a safe space, be compassionate, have that empathy. So I'm like, I think it's, I do come from lived experience. So I think that's maybe the difference. Like, we just need more people with lived experience who are in these positions.
And who feel safe enough to come forward. But you look at most addiction, a lot of domestic and family violence, sexual trauma, it's all trauma-based. And it leads out to eating disorders and addictions, it's all trauma. The cause of all of it is trauma. If our society spent a little bit more time understanding trauma and what it is, understanding that most of us have it to varying degrees, some of us more extreme than others, then that, and raising awareness there, like they did with the, years ago they had the whole mental health destigmatization media campaigns. If they could do that with trauma and really educate on that large scale, because they've got the finances and resources to do it, we'd see shifts in our society. And I think that empathy would grow. The more people that felt safe to come forward and share, because it's not easy sharing lived experience stories, because society is full of judgmental assholes. Pardon my language.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
There's another word, but I thought I'd better not. But it's frustrating. Like, I try and show more openness and awareness, and some of this is for humour's sake as well. But at the end of the day, it's not hard to show kindness and compassion to another human being. If someone says, hey, this happened to me, you don't need to therapize them. You've just got to sit there and go, shit, that sucks.
Yeah, and make them feel heard.
That's it. Not judged.
Yeah. Safe space to talk.
Absolutely. Brené Brown says the antidote to shame is empathy. And empathy is a skill that can be taught. So why are we not teaching it more broadly? Why are we not teaching people what to say and how to say it? Well, we do. That's part of our plan, is to shed that awareness. So we don't have a massively broad audience, though, because we rely on social media and we don't have funding backing us at the moment, which is something we will ultimately change, because we can't keep going the way we are. We'll all burn out. So we need to get that in there. But it's just interesting to me that people aren't more compassionate when people say, hey, this is my lived experience of something. Instead of judging, that person's been in a great deal of pain, and it takes a great deal of courage to say, this is my experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on to the next question. I knew we'd get a good bit of meat there in that last question. Yes. In your experience, and I guess we have already touched on this already a little bit so far, but in your experience, what are common challenges survivors face when seeking support, and how does the Blue Butterfly Institute address these challenges?
Yeah, it is the shame of owning your story, of acknowledging. A lot of sexual trauma victims will blame themselves. They must have done something wrong for this to happen. And if they're of a later generation, so child protection education in New South Wales came in 1987, where it became mandatory for teachers to report, or health professionals to report. And so there became, after that period of time, child protection education lessons in classrooms. So kids today are more cognizant of the fact that sexual abuse and physical abuse and emotional abuse and neglect are not allowed to happen, or shouldn't be happening in the home. They're not the best experiences to grow up in, or it's not the best environment. So kids today are more aware that this shouldn't be happening. So I think they report more frequently. Not all of the time, because there's still shame there. And as I've said before, there's no goddamn services for them once they do disclose.
Yes,
but
absolutely.
They actually disclose, which, is better than not disclosing and keeping it hidden for so long. So the most common challenge is the shame that they've done something wrong. There's something fundamentally broken within them, and that to share that will let people know that they're dirty and they've been damaged and they've done something. And because they didn't tell anyone, we have a lot of older survivors who say, why didn't I say anything? And we think, well, God, you were 3 years old, you were 4 years old. How would you know that that's what you meant to do? So the challenges of survivors coming forward are sharing their story and the shame that they feel, and the fact that they may have tried with other people and not got a very supportive response, which re-traumatizes them. So I think it's that having that courage to take that first step. Also knowing that once you take that step, you can't go backwards. You can't take it back. You can't go back into the cocoon that you've been living in. And that safe space you've been living in, because it's what you know, even if it's damaging, you can't go back. So I think one of the main obstacles to survivors seeking support is the shame and the fear, and also not knowing how people will receive it. So what we do to address these challenges is that we show support, we just hold space, and we normalize their experience, and we go, you're not the only one who feels this way. This is normal how you're feeling. It's okay that you feel this way. And we push the idea that it's not something that you've done, it's something that was done to you. It was something you didn't have control over. And so that instantly makes it not your fault, because you trusted an adult or you trusted someone and you thought you were safe to do that. And it's not your fault that they did the wrong thing. So we really push that narrative of it is not something you have done, it was something that was done to you. And then we provide the safe spaces, hopefully safe spaces, for them to work through some of the issues. And we do all of that for free. We don't charge for our services because
which
therapy
is
expensive.
incredible. It is.
Yeah.
It is very expensive. That's been one of the biggest challenges I've seen in WA as well, in particular, is that a lot of the free counselling services, the wait time is between 6 and 12 months.
So I work in a not-for-profit women's health centre here in New South Wales 2 days a week, and our counselling wait list, we can have, we only keep 7 on the wait list at a time, because that could be a 12-week wait. It's often not, which is why we keep it small, but we also refer to other agencies within the area who all have waiting lists. It's very rare to get a spot straight away in our area.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest challenges as well, is that there isn't really enough resources, and this is where, you know, people like yourself coming in and trying to bridge that gap is just so needed, and it's amazing, and I really, really like and thankful for people like you, Tina. But I really liked how you were mentioning before that shame can be a really big part of people not being able to seek support, because coming from a position of, you know, being an addict, a drug addict myself, and an alcoholic, I often was met with a lot of shame and judgment a few of the times that I did reach out early, like probably within the first few years. And then that actually got me to a point where I was like, well, I'm never going to speak about it again, because people are just not going to react well. So I'm just going to keep dealing with this chaos that I've got going on right now, and I'll just figure it out myself, which I did not figure it out myself. No. Things only got worse for me. And it wasn't until I got to an absolute rock bottom that I was forced to actually be admitted and then have to talk to people and things like that. But, you know, I often do wonder, I wonder what would have happened if I was met with those loving arms and that safe space. Like, could that have been a turn for me then? I don't know. So,
we've got to trust the process, I think, in healing, and that things come to us and happen when they're meant to. That's what I firmly believe. Because similarly, I've hit rock bottom a lot of times in my own healing journey, and because I was dealing with it on my own, because when I was growing up, where do you go for support? There was nothing that I knew of.
Of course,
and so where do you go? And how do you find counsellors that are trauma informed and have that specific experience? It's a lot easier these days because we're online, so we can find those things, and you can have appointments with people in different parts of the country or the world. So there's more availability, I guess, in that sense. But you've still got to overcome that. I've been knocked back a couple of times, or people have treated me badly, and we do internalize that. We think there must be something wrong with us. And it's only when we're told that, no, you're responding to a situation in the only way you had available at that time that you were aware of. It's as simple as that. Yeah. It's not as simple as that in the breakdown and the healing and the rest of it, unfortunately. But if our society was significantly more compassionate and more supportive and more open and more authentic, you may not have turned to drugs at all. I may not have stayed closeted in my little depressive bubble of life that was up and down and all over the shop for as long as I did, if there was that safe space that we could come out and speak and share. And I believe a lot of our best healing happens in community.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's been proven that, us humans, we thrive on connection. We need that connection. It's vital. And I have noticed, even just with, I guess, addiction recovery, and I feel like it's the same with any type of trauma recovery as well, is
Yeah,
that you do your best healing as a collective. When you've got
yeah,
an entire support network around you, you can't do it on your own. You can't. If you're going to succeed this long term, you
yeah,
need a support network. You need your village. So yeah,
you do.
it absolutely is vital.
Yeah, so it's important we create them and lived experience, like the peer workers, and those of us, our victim survivors. We're the ones that create that community because I guess we are the ones that know how important it is. And
Yeah,
if only the people who had the money and the power to legislate would listen to people like us,
yeah,
it
yeah,
would be a different
absolutely.
world.
I completely agree. I completely agree.
Mm.
What are some of the problems that can occur in our development if these traumas aren't addressed correctly? So we touched on this a little bit already, but yeah, what are those issues that can arise?
You've obviously got long-term mental health issues that come as a result of people not seeking support as early as they can receive it. So you've got mental health long-term issues. You've got then the links to illnesses like fibromyalgia, most autoimmune disorders, but those illnesses come with a trauma base. It's our body holding on to the traumas that we've not been able to expel because we haven't worked through them, because we haven't
I
had safe
didn't know
space.
that.
I might be making that up, but I don't think I am. I'm sure Gabriel Mate has said things that are similar. But it's always been my belief, even prior to listening to him speak and reading his work. But I come from that belief as well that we're whole humans, and so all of our healthcare needs to be holistic. So if something's wrong in the body, there's obviously something wrong in the emotions
Well,
or
the
the psyche.
body keeps score, doesn't it?
I love Bessel. And yeah, it does. We hold all of that stuff, and it makes it very hard to move through illness if we're not looking at our health holistically, in my
Yes.
opinion. And then there's issues around, so if you've got your long-term mental health and physical health issues, you've then also got the inability to learn because concentration can be impacted, the inability to hold work because your mental health and physical health impact that. So the long-term impact is significant just in those areas, let alone relationships. And then you've got a lot of victim survivors who do turn to drugs and alcohol to numb the
Yeah.
pain that's in their bodies. And then relationships, I think, is one of the biggest, because as children who are victimized, we don't learn healthy boundaries, and we don't learn to respect our own bodies or our own selves, because we're told through the actions of another person that our needs aren't worth anything, that they don't count. So we've got to rewire that patterning in relationships. And so whilst I'm highly educated and I look like I function exceptionally well and have pretty much always, unless you've been close to me, know that it looks like I function well, in the area of relationships, I have not, because I didn't know that I was worth anything. So, and then I didn't know how to connect with people authentically. And I didn't know how, to be honest, because when you're holding that part of a story that's so instrumental to who you are inside of yourself, you can't open up to people either. So you can't create healthy relationships. It's
Yes,
only been in the
absolutely.
last 5 or so years that I have been I've been working on that relationship part of it and healing my own relationships and setting new boundaries and understanding that I'm worth something and I'm not just there at everyone else's beck and call. And so people pleasing is a huge problem with victim survivors.
Yes, absolutely. And I can 100% relate to all of that, actually, because
Mm,
I experienced sexual abuse when I was in high school.
mm,
And it was actually from someone who was of my age. So, someone that I was in a relationship with, and I got very confused on what is right, what is wrong, what's an adult relationship, what's not. Really, really confused on those factors, simply because my parents didn't talk to me about any of that. So I was very uneducated and very unaware. And I found after that experience, because it went on for like a good year, and my mum found out, so it really got it intervened at some point, but that I didn't really realize how traumatic and how serious it was until just after I left high school, when I started trying to get into my first like proper relationship with someone, and how hard it was for me to be intimate with them. Everything felt wrong. I was like, oh my gosh, like, do not touch me. Don't touch my head. Don't do this. Don't do that. And I was really, really finding it difficult. And then they actually, like, they were a bit like, whoa, like, what's causing this reaction? Like, have I done something to upset you? And I was like, oh my gosh, like that was when it was a bit of a light bulb moment. I was like, oh man, like I've actually been through something. And that's when I first even properly spoke about it, which was years later. And that was the first kind of realization that what I went through wasn't okay. And then I started to recognize the impact it was having now with me trying to be intimate. And so that was like, oh my gosh, like I've got some stuff to work on, because I literally can't engage with someone right now. Like it's too hard. It's too hard for me. So yeah, I can completely relate to that.
How sad, when we all need connection, and we want connection that's whole with someone. We want to feel safe and seen and heard and valued. And just that sexual trauma makes it infinitely more difficult. And the longer we leave to process and work through it, the more difficult it becomes.
Absolutely. And it's
trust.
It is. And I think it really made me question my trust for people, actually. And I really questioned people's intentions as well afterwards. So if guys were being really flirty or something like that, I'd be like, what do you want? Like, I'd have to get quite aggressive.
But it's protecting yourself, isn't it? To make sure straight up you know what you're in for, you know what they want. So you need to know what the boundaries are and what the intentions are, so you know you're safe.
Yes,
it's all about
exactly.
that protection of self.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's horrible. And I think there's not enough airplay given to that creating sexual intimacy in a healthy, connected way after sexual trauma.
Yeah. And I think as well, like for me not being educated as well when I was younger, and it's something that I've actually talked about with my parents since then. They've really recognized the importance of, having those conversations with children and making sure they understand what is right, what is wrong, so they can also identify it. Because for me, I had no idea. I was just like, oh, this is what adults do, even though everything about this feels so wrong. I feel I'm being physically forced. Like I just, and if he says if I don't do these things, then I don't love him. So I guess I have to do it.
And how many young people hear that in those first early relationships, that if you loved me, you would do this? And it's not, it's horrible. And I guess that's another point of education, that we need to let young people, males and females, know that it's their body. And if something doesn't feel comfortable or right, they are allowed to say no, and that no needs to be respected.
Yeah, tell them to take a hike.
Maybe we should create this lovely little ad about consent that has to do with milkshakes or whatever it was that the Morrison government put out a few years ago. Do you remember that ad?
No, I don't.
Oh, you need to go and Google that. It's classic. It was about milkshakes. If she wants a milkshake, she can have a milkshake. But if she doesn't want a milkshake, even though the milkshake's there, I can't remember exactly. And it might not have been milkshakes. It might have been tea or something. But there was some ridiculous advertising campaign. It was pulled after they spent millions of dollars on it. Ridiculous.
Just more wasted money.
Ask people with lived experience, because when you're talking to people, it needs to be quite plain. It needs to be black and white.
Yeah, and why are we sugarcoating it with teas and milkshakes? Like why are we covering it up?
Oh, because there's such a stigma about anything sexual in our society. And it's
Does my
easier
brain.
to sugarcoat it and make it look pretty and have no substance whatsoever that has any value to anyone, instead of just facing things front on.
Well, that kind of leads me into my next question. So, given the sensitive nature of your work, how do
Yeah.
you prioritize self-care for both survivors and your team?
In my case, it's a case of do what I say and not what I do. But this is an area that I am now myself working on, because I at the end of last year I was exhausted and burnt out. Compassion fatigue is real, and we've only got so much when we're not replenishing. So within the institute, we're very trauma informed. If people don't feel comfortable doing something, they have the option to not do it. It's as simple as that, without judgment, without it, being used against them. We try to be very trauma informed all of the time, in terms of, if someone is expressing something that's not normal for them, there's another story going on behind that. And so there's support. We offer support. We, in our board and committee meetings, we call them rumbles, based on Brené Brown's Daring to Lead organizational impact stuff. And we also use Amy Edmonds' psychological safety. And I'm about to bring in, I've ordered a book called, what is it? Oh, here it goes. It's gone. It'll come back to me. But it's about self-care for people who are working in trauma industries. So in
Okay, cool.
teaching, in healthcare and all the rest of it. What is it called?
That's all right. We'll come back to it.
I've got it on the photo on the phone, but I will get to that in a second. So it's about being present and creating a safe environment where people can speak about what's going on for them, not just in terms of their work. It's called trauma stewardship. So it's been recommended to me, and it's about self-caring when you're in the helping professions to mitigate the impact as much as you can of compassion fatigue and overload and burnout and overwhelm and all of that sort of stuff. So we're always restructuring how we do things to cater for changes that come up, to cater for workload, all of that sort of stuff. So we obviously also push keeping gratitude, and we check in and all. Like, we try and create teams that are working supportively with one another, and we're still growing and developing that. It's not perfect, but we definitely, within the institute, we're trying to look after people's well-being and getting people to be more responsible for their own well-being in the same sense. For our survivors, obviously it's therapy, so we build in, like, our support groups have a messenger group attached to them, so that people can vent in there and can talk to each other in there and can set up relationships that are supportive of what they go through on a day-to-day basis. So it's not just a once a month support group. Our therapy is done slightly different. It's not like, we understand that with sexual trauma, you can have your 50-minute weekly or fortnightly or monthly appointment, but there are going to be things that come up that are too hard. And so there's this little bit of crisis management in there as well. And it's just about creating community and enabling people and empowering people to feel safe within themselves to be able to reach out for the things that they need.
Yeah. No, that's
And
awesome. That's really important as well. What was the book called again? Sorry.
it's called Trauma Stewardship, and it's by Laura. Oh, I've just lost it. Fair income, Tina. Laura Van Dernoot Lipsky's work. Laura Van Dernoot, Dernoot, and then Lipsky, Lipsky. It's quite an
Beautiful.
old book, but and I, like I said, I haven't read it yet, but it was recommended to me, and I was given a couple of excerpts, and I thought, oh, this looks good. So it's about
Good.
looking.
Yeah, I would be very interested in giving that a read, because
Yeah,
particularly going into the AOD sector myself and
yeah.
just trying to make sure that I take care, I think is really important. And I love
There's,
that you're, oh, sorry.
no, there's a website as well with resources on it, so it's worth looking at.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah,
I'll definitely get that off you later.
yeah. It's called the same thing, Trauma Stewardship.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
How can individuals who are resonating with what we're discussing here today start the journey of seeking help? Like, what would be your best advice?
Find someone you can talk to. Find someone you can get advice from. It doesn't need to be structured counseling. It doesn't need to be a support group. It might be going to yoga. It might be just changing one thing in your life. However, ultimately, my aim would be that they would reach out to us or an organisation like us, and they would talk to someone within that organisation, and they would then let that person help them come up with a plan that's best for them,
Yeah.
if that makes
And
sense.
yes, yes, it does. And so, what services do you currently have on offer? Do you have any workshops, events? I mean, you mentioned you've got a support group
Yeah.
that people can dip their toe into if they aren't ready to commit to counselling,
Sure.
but are willing to educate themselves further.
Yep. Our Facebook page and our website, but predominantly our Facebook page and Instagram, have a lot of stuff on there. We have educational posts, supportive posts, trauma posts, and so that's one way of people just dipping their toe in. And Blue Knot Foundation over here in New South Wales and Brave Hearts in Queensland have similar things. And basically people can just read. Instagram has lots of great trauma informed posts from different people as well. So Instagram's a good source of just making you feel less alone and starting to lose some of that shame story that most victim survivors carry, so that you realize you're not alone, that it's not just you feeling that way. There are other people who have felt the same way. There are people that have healed. So if one person can heal, I think most people can heal. They've got to be willing to, obviously, and healing is a very yucky, horrible journey. I only recommend it for the benefits that come to after you've done a fair bit of the work, but it can be a very alone process. So I think you definitely need to reach out for support. Support groups aren't great for everyone. They can be activating because you're listening to other survivors' impacts. So everyone, you're quite right when you say everyone is very individual, and everyone will have their own healing journey and their own healing path. And it doesn't necessarily have to be counselling.
Yeah, absolutely. And I definitely highly encourage that. Even if someone takes a step to go to a support group and it doesn't feel right, or they take a step to a certain service and it doesn't feel right, to not discourage them from
Yeah,
continuing to take these steps forward. Because, yes, we are all individual. We'll have all a unique way of recovering. Everyone's
yeah,
recovery journey is different. Just try
absolutely.
something else.
And try different people, because you might come across a counsellor or psychologist and you might go, oh, I don't really resonate with them. I don't feel a connection. But that's not, you're not having a connection with psychology or counselling. That's with a person. So make sure you
Yes.
keep trying. Sometimes it can take time to find the right person for you. I'm a
Yes.
firm believer that we don't stick with one person for a very long period of time, like 20 years, because
Yep.
especially in sexual trauma, you've got many aspects of the soul and self that need to be recovered, basically.
And you can learn so much from so many different people. You know, the more
Absolutely.
people that you're kind of working with, the more knowledge you have at hand. So yeah,
Yeah.
no, I completely agree with that. And I always definitely encourage all my friends and family, if they go to counseling, they're like, oh, that was shit house. I hated it. Oh, like that chick was a bitch or whatever.
Yeah.
I just say, like, well, they're just not right for you. Like,
That's
just
it.
go look for someone else. She obviously didn't
Yep.
click with that person, and that's
Yep.
fine. But that doesn't mean like, oh, toss it in the bin, see you later. Counseling doesn't work, or like
That,
psychology doesn't work,
or yoga doesn't work, or writing
or
doesn't
yoga.
work,
Yep,
or EMDR
exactly.
doesn't work, or EFT doesn't work. Something will work. Everyone's different, and it's coming in. And like, I'm an EFT practitioner, so tapping. Yet for my own trauma, I didn't use it. I've used EMDR with a facilitator, and that's been
Yeah.
brilliant.
And you know what's
But
funny?
after,
I did EMDR, but I hated it. I
oh
actually found it
wow,
I found it really triggering, and so I stopped doing EMDR. So
see, that
so
might
we're
be
all
the
different.
facilitator as well. Well, we are all different. I
Yeah.
found an absolutely amazing EMDR by accident therapist here last year. When I booked in with her, I didn't realise she did EMDR, and it really pushed my healing on a lot further. But having said that, I know other people who have used EMDR with no impact. And I'm thinking, oh, this is interesting. Everyone's different. What works for one won't necessarily work for someone else, and that's okay.
And you know what I actually found really accelerated my healing recovery was actually this beautiful coach.
Yeah.
It was someone who was a life coach, and there is a lot of stigma around that. You know, there are some life coaches that have, you know, done us dirty, but there are some really incredible ones too who I just found I was like
And would you say it's mostly the connection you find with the person that makes the difference?
Well, they also had a very like holistic approach, and I'm a very spiritual person, and I found their approach I really connected with, and they really made me sink in quite deeply as well. Like I went straight into shadow work. I went straight into inner child. You know, I was just it was balls deep pretty quick. So that helped me. Some people might find that confronting, but for me, I actually
you were ready for it.
I excelled.
Yeah, it's perfect. But we're all different. And I think that's so important that people realize that what works for one won't necessarily work for anyone else. It will work for others, but not necessarily you. And it's okay. You keep searching until you find. So for what I've done is all through my life, when I've been called to something, when I feel that calling, I think, oh, that's interesting. I wonder what that's about. I will then dip into that and put my toe in there, and it's never failed me yet. But it came from trusting my intuition.
Yes.
And so I've done lots of different modalities.
Yeah, and I think that's important. It's important to mix things up, try different things, go down different pathways. I think it's very, very important to explore all your options before tossing in the towel.
My oath. And never give up. There's always hope.
Yes, yeah. Even if you have tried a lot of things and things still aren't working for you, it doesn't mean that there's still not something out there that will work for you. You just got to find it.
That's it. There will always be hope, and it's trusting that it will come, and that all of the pain we sit in is temporary. It doesn't feel it when you're at the bottom of that trough drowning in it, but it is temporary. There will always be a light that comes. Always.
Yes, absolutely.
You just got to trust it's going to be there, and it will be. It will be.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned before as well that you guys provide free counselling. Is all your services free?
Everything's free. I made it, and I'm lucky I've got board and committee members that agree with this, even though we sometimes go, what the fuck are we doing? We committed to never charging. And I've had lots of arguments with people outside of the institute about who said you need to. Well, no, because therapy is expensive. Like to find a good therapist, well, it's not always expensive, but it more often than not is expensive. Well, like over here, I paid $250 for a psychology session yesterday, and that was just a touch one to meet a new psychologist in case I get activated, because this work can be quite activating for me. And even though I have professional supervision, it brings up my own stuff that I need
the extra support no matter what.
Absolutely. And so we've had an interview with each other yesterday, but I paid $250 for that. And like, I am not earning much because I only work 2 days a week and the odd day of teaching. That'll change this term. But you know, like it's a lot of money to have, and sexual trauma is not short term. It's always going to be a long-term process because it's so multifaceted. So
I think that's another issue with the system, is the way that that's all been set up. Even like there are rebates that you can get, but you still got to front up that full amount first, which can be very, very hard to do in the first place. So even though you're getting like a good, I don't know, 70% of it back, it's even just having that amount back. No?
70% back. Hang on a minute. No, because I have a mental health care plan for the first time in my life, because I was trying to mitigate some of that. Hang on a minute. I'll tell you how much I get. I pay $250 and I get 93 back. So I don't know how to work out percentages. I've just realised I've put up my
definitely not 70.
No. Yeah, but
maybe
it is, because no, it's not. It's less than 50.
It's not.
Anyway, well, I'm an English teacher. I did say that I'm an English teacher, I'm not numeracy based. Up to year 8.
Right, no judgment here.
That's good. But yeah, so it's not quite like, and psychologists, I think their recommended rate is 300 or 320 or something. So they're under,
Okay.
he's under what their recommended, I'm an English teacher, a recommended rate is. I ran circle for women last night, so the energy's a bit tired today.
That's
Um,
okay.
yeah, so it's expensive. And like
It
over
is.
here, and I think you have that in Western Australia, we've got victim services and compensation. And so you can get 22 in a calendar year sessions with a psychologist. Um, and they are free, I think. But you don't get to go anywhere you want. You've got to go from their pool of people who have been approved.
Oh, okay.
And there's
Right.
nothing in there to say that they're sexual trauma specific or drug and alcohol specific or domestic and family violence specific. And I think it makes a difference.
That makes a huge difference because the choice should be yours.
Yeah,
Because as we said before, we might not connect with someone. What if you don't connect with that person?
it's
What do you
exactly
do
right.
then?
That's exactly right. And so you waste your sessions, your 22 sessions or up to 22 sessions, you waste those trying to find the right person with a connection. Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's not the best system when we say that we're committed to mental health and we're committed to people with trauma and the rest of it. I think it's a bit of a lie, to be honest.
I agree. I really agree with that. So, where do you need the most support as a non-for-profit business trying to help those in need heal from sexual trauma? What do you guys need?
Money.
Give us the money.
If there is a wealthy billionaire or billionaires out there who would like to give us some money, that would be great. So at the moment, based on my own business, where I charge $200 an hour or $175 an hour for what I'm doing for free in the institute, we've already given out almost $100,000 worth of free services.
Wow.
A lot of hours, a lot of people, and a lot of money. And so we need money to be able to subsidize the work that we do. We need money to pay for admin because we're all doing it voluntarily, and we're growing, and so we're not a little institute, but it's people giving a lot of their time up to be able to make this happen and to support people. And obviously we all get we're intrinsically motivated, because the only extrinsic motivation we get is from the connection we build with each other. So we're quite a strong little team, but it is about getting money in, and grants are so hard to get because we're not quite big enough and we're not quite small enough. We're sort of in that mid-range where we're pretty much overlooked because we're competing with the big ones, and we haven't got the capacity to do what they do because we've got no paid staff. We all do all of this in our own time, outside of our work time, outside of families, outside of life.
Yeah. So would you say maybe either getting some sponsors or people donating? What would be the best way?
Well, people can donate through our website, and every cent helps. In the last week, because we're running a high tea fundraiser next Sunday, and like people aren't able to afford to come because the cost of living is so expensive, but people have put in $30 donations, and that's just lovely. It warms my heart. We are also going to start a rounder thing. We're just getting in the process of getting that organised, where people can donate it, like sign up to that website and pick us as the charity that they donate their 5 cents in their shopping to.
Oh, beautiful.
So we're looking at that sort of stuff. But because we're all so limited as well, it's hard to get out there. And like we've got someone in charge of grants, but we're not finding many grants that accommodate our needs. Small ones to get the yoga program paid for and the story program paid for stuff. But not for the big running costs of the institute, which is unfortunate.
So if do you have on your page like a donation button?
Yes,
Or
as soon as you come onto the page, there's a donate button.
Perfect.
That's
Okay.
on the
So
website.
so what I might do, I might even direct our listeners today to your page, and
that
we'll
would be lovely.
we'll also put out a bit of information to our audience on our other platforms about how they can donate.
Thank you.
Potentially you and I can even talk about
Yes.
maybe how to reach out to some potential sponsors. I do have a
that would be
background
great.
in that, so I can help you.
Thank you.
But yeah, I
We'll
think what
take
you
any help.
Yeah, I think what you're doing is amazing, and I would absolutely love to do the best that I can to help support you guys.
Thank
So
you.
yeah, we'll put that out there for our audience.
Thank you. Very,
That's
very, very
okay.
grateful.
Yeah, that's all right. I'm grateful for you, Tina. I'm really proud of you, and thank you so much for
You.
everything that you're doing. It's just
Thank you.
absolutely needed. It's a necessity, and just thank you, thank you, thank you.
Oh, thank you. I struggle to receive. I don't know if you saw the discomfort on my face there when you thanked me, but I'm learning and getting better. But no, thank you. Thank you very much for letting me be here today. And you have already given us a lot of support, which people won't be aware of behind the scenes. And I'm very grateful for that as well. You
Thank
put
you,
your money where
Tina.
your mouth is, and I'm grateful for that.
Thanks, Tina. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today, and I'll be in touch with you soon regarding some sponsors.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.
All right. Bye, Tina.
Bye.